Hi, I'm Hyperfreeze Games. So, a problem I encountered by modeling this weapon and hands for my upcoming horror game Narrowwood's Breach is that if you have an object and set the pivot point in the middle, if you rotate it, you get these little gaps. But a solution for it is to off-center the pivot point, so it more naturally bends the object, like this finger for example. If you look at your own fingers, this is actually more accurate because the joint isn't exactly in the middle. So for stuff like fingers that bend only in one direction really, this is perfectly fine, so this is a perfectly suitable solution. But as I said, your fingers naturally won't bend in the other direction. If you would though, with this solution, you can see these gaps will still appear and they will be even more prominent than if the pivot point would be in the center. So the solution I came up with while playing around in Blockbench and I want to show you today is using two separate bones for each object that you want to behave like this. So we'd create one bone and offset the pivot point of it to one side, and then create a second bone underneath the first one and offset the pivot point to the opposite position. So instead of getting these nasty gaps, we can now rotate the object to the one side using the first bone and to the other side using the second bone without getting any gaps whatsoever. So it looks really natural. A good object to show off this technique would be a tentacle. So I completed the model and set the bones for the different elements as I did for the first one. To make it look nicer, I started painting this tentacle texture directly onto the object, which turned out quite nice. Not my best work, but I think it'll do the trick for this video. When I was happy with the texture, I started to create this little wiggle animation to showcase the smoothness of this double joint setup. I then realized I forgot to off-center the pivot points for the upper element, so I just went back and did this afterwards, which is no problem in Blockbench. You can just leave the animation, change the pivot point's position, and then return to whatever you were doing before that. So back in the animation window, I completed this little wiggle motion, but there was some pink or purple showing, which is why I went back to the painting window and added these little green sides, like filled the sides in, the vertices in, to just make it look a bit more nicer still. With that done, I was quite happy with the animation, except for the speed of it. So the tentacle was just wiggling too much, too fast, so I simply went and stretched the whole animation out. So stretched to half the speed, like double the animation time, it looked really nice. I didn't like how the tentacle was just originating out of nothing, and you could see like the lower end of it wiggling, like turning to the different sides. So to mask that, I just added this little hole in the ground where the tentacle like extends from. To make everything look more alive, I just duplicated the one tentacle we had 2 times and scaled both new versions down a bit. And just offset the animation keyframes to make it look more natural moving. So with all that done, this is the final animation, and I think you can see how this technique is quick to implement, like for tentacles, for tails of dragons, or you name it. And it's quite effective to make the movement just more natural. It looks like it actually stretches the skin. So yeah, that's just a cool thing I wanted to show you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hopefully see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!